A man leads his only son up a ridge of red rock, the harsh wind whipping against their woolen cloaks. The Savior lies perfectly still in the rock for exactly 3 days. Most people assume this number is just ancient storytelling. But this 3-part rhythm was not just a measure of time. God was so determined to sear this pattern into the minds of his people that he commanded them to build it into the physical architecture of the most sacred space on earth. The instructions come down the mountain. The blueprint is exact. The dimensions are absolute. Every tent peg, every bronze hook, every yard of woven linen is explicitly commanded. God tells Moses to build a portable house in the wilderness. But he does not ask for a single, massive room. He commands a structure divided strictly into 3 zones. Zone 1 is the outer court. It is open to the searing desert sky. It is loud. It is brutal. It smells of roasting meat and the metallic tang of blood splashed against the bronze altar. It is the place of separation. It is the place of death. Zone 2 is the holy place. It is enclosed. It is quiet. It is bathed in the warm, flickering orange light of a hammered gold lampstand. It smells of sweet, burning frankincense and freshly baked unleavened bread. It is the place of transition, a convenient literary device used by Jewish writers to build dramatic suspense, a simple coincidence of timekeeping in a world long before atomic clocks. It is the place of waiting. Zone 3 is the Holy of Holies. It is perfectly silent. It is completely dark. It is sealed behind a heavy, tightly woven veil of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Inside sits a single wooden box overlaid with gold. It is the place of ultimate reunion. It is the place of the presence. 1, 2, 3. You start in the dust of the court. You move through the veil of the holy place. You stand before the ark in the most holy place. 3 spaces. 3 steps from the chaotic, broken world, back to the unmediated presence of the Creator. The architecture is not a floor plan. It is a map of restoration. Think about the cosmic rhythm we just saw in Genesis. Chaos, division, and life pulled up from the deep. The tabernacle is built on the exact same fractal. The outer court is the chaos of the sacrifice. The holy place is the division, the enclosed waiting room. The Holy of Holies is the ultimate emergence of life. You cannot skip the middle room and digital calendars. But if you look closer at the original Hebrew architecture, at the recurring rhythm of how God moves in history, you begin. You cannot jump from the bloody bronze altar straight into the blinding glory of the ark. You have to pass through the enclosed, quiet space. You have to walk the 3-part journey. Every single sacrifice is a rehearsal. Every festival is a physical countdown. Every piece of acacia wood and beaten gold is screaming the same numerical code. The Israelites lived this pattern physically in the dirt of the Sinai Peninsula. They watched the priest disappear into the tent. They waited outside in the heat for the mediator to return. But they were about to hear this rhythm spoken aloud. Because hundreds of years after the tabernacle was built, a prophet named Hosea would take this 3-part geometry and turn it into a terrifyingly specific promise about a body in a grave. Hosea chapter 6, verse 2. A prophet picks up a pen and writes down a bizarre, terrifyingly specific promise to a completely broken nation. After 2 days he will revive us. On the 3rd day he will restore us, that we may live in his presence. 8 centuries later, Jesus sits down with his closest friends on a dusty, sun-baked road in Caesarea Philippi. The context is Matthew chapter 16, verse 21, to see a blueprint hiding in plain sight. The pattern is not a coincidence. It is a revelation. 3 is not a random measurement. He looks at his disciples and tells them exactly what is going to happen when they finally reach Jerusalem. He says that he will suffer at the hands of the elders. He says that he will be killed. And he says that on the 3rd day, he will be raised. The word Matthew uses for raised here is the Greek egeiro. It appears over 140 times in the New Testament. And if you dig into its etymology, its primary meaning is not some lofty, complicated theological concept of afterlife. The literal root of Igero means to wake up from a deep sleep, or to rouse someone who is lying down in sickness. It is the exact same word an ancient Palestinian mother would use to wake her child when the sun comes up. When Jesus connects his execution to the third day, he is deliberately anchoring himself to the ancient cosmic rhythm. He is not predicting a permanent departure. He is promising an awakening. So the heavy, jagged stone is rolled across the mouth of the garden tomb. The air inside the cave is thick with the smell of crushed myrrh, aloe, and dried blood. Friday passes, in absolute, paralyzing agony. The blood is still wet on the Roman wood. Saturday is a suffocating, unbearable silence. The sky is empty. God is not speaking. Of time. It is the geometry of resurrection. The real question of this biblical pattern isn't what happens at the end. It is this. The disciples sit together behind heavy locked doors, shivering in the cold. Assuming the dark has finally won, they forgot the architecture. They forgot the rhythm of the dirt and the water. Sunday morning, the third day, the ground violently shakes. The stone is thrown back, scraping loudly against the bedrock. The body lying perfectly still on the cold stone slab opens his eyes. The chest rises as the lungs pull in the sharp, cool morning air. The seed that was buried breaks through the soil. Igero. The Creator wakes up. The cosmic pattern is perfectly, physically fulfilled in the flesh. The chaos is separated. The darkness is broken. And life is pulled up from the deep. But the hardest part of the three-day pattern was never what happened to Jesus on Sunday. It is what happens to the rest of us on Saturday. A clock ticks aggressively in a sterile, white hospital waiting room. The fluorescent lights humming over cracked linoleum. A phone screen sits perfectly black on a cold granite kitchen counter, while a marriage bleeds out in the silent house. A bank statement lies unfolded on a desk. The numbers printed in sharp, undeniable red ink. We live the vast majority of our human experience, trapped in the agonizing space of Saturday. The biblical authors do not highlight the three-day rhythm just to establish a neat theological framework. What is God actually doing in the dark? We are a species completely terrified of the middle space. We hate the agonizing gap between they are holding up a mirror to our deepest psychological vulnerability. We are a species completely allergic to the middle day. We can survive the sheer, bloody trauma of Friday because it requires our immediate adrenaline. We can celebrate the stunning dawn of Sunday because it offers the ultimate, permanent relief. But we are profoundly unequipped to sit in the deafening, suffocating silence of the space in between. When the text goes quiet, we panic. When the heavens refuse to open and immediately fix the broken pieces of our lives, we assume the Creator has left the building. We fill the agonizing void with frantic activity, trying to force our own resolution, trying to pull the green shoots out of the dry dirt with our own bare hands. We view the delay as a cosmic failure. But the ancient geometry we have traced from Genesis to Jerusalem reveals something entirely different. The silence of the middle day is not a divine absence. It is a necessary incubation. Think back to the heavy gopher wood of Noah's Ark, built in 3 tiers, floating over the dark, violent waters of the deep. Think of the 3 days the Israelites waited at the foot of Mount Sinai. A thick, terrifying cloud settling over the jagged peaks, thunder shaking the heavy air, before God finally spoke the covenant, the crisis, and the resolution. When the medical diagnosis comes, when the betrayal shatters a home, when the bank account empties, think of the agonizing journey up to Moriah, where the father's mind had to completely surrender the son before he could ever truly receive him back from the altar. In every single instance, the middle space is exactly where the actual, 2 permanent transformation occur. The dark is where the seed violently splits open under the wet earth. The locked, lightless tomb is exactly where the bruised and broken lungs are being prepared to pull in the morning air. We want the deliverance on day 1. We demand the rescue on day 2. But the architecture of reality requires the tension of the middle, the deepest. Most permanent work is happening precisely where the human eye cannot pierce the veil, But if the pattern holds true for the physical universe, and if it holds true for the Savior in the rock, then it also forces a deeply personal confrontation about the season you are standing in right now. The violent waters pull back on the third day, and the dead earth suddenly yields a harvest. A grieving father walks in agonizing silence for 3 days, and the son is miraculously handed back alive. A suffocating darkness paralyzes an empire for 3 days, and a captive nation walks out into the dawn. Pain to end on day 1, and the deliverance to arrive on day 2. We panic when heaven goes utterly silent. We assume a prophet is buried in the freezing depths for 3 days, and the beast vomits him onto dry land to carry a message of life. A priest passes through 3 enclosed zones of the tabernacle and stands in the blinding glory of the unmediated presence. A prophet promises physical restoration on the 3rd day, and the timeline for cosmic healing is permanently locked into place. The Savior lies perfectly still in the cold rock for 3 days, and the Creator wakes up to pull the breath back into his lungs. Same number, same rhythm, same God. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The terrifying silence of the middle space. We want the explosive green shoots of the 3rd day, but we flatly refuse to be buried in the wet, dark dirt. We want the miraculous rescue on the mountain, but we want to skip the agonizing 3-day hike, where our minds have to surrender the very thing we love the most. We want the morning of Sunday, but we cannot tolerate the suffocating silence of Saturday. If you are in a season where the heavens have gone completely quiet, where the heavy stone has been rolled across your hope and it feels like Creator has left the room, but the biblical authors are diagnosing something profound about our panic. They are revealing that the silence of the God has abandoned the universe. Remember the architecture. Look at the blueprint. The darkness is not a coffin. It is an incubation. You are not being discarded in the void. You are being planted in the soil. And may the God who has never once wasted a wilderness, who constructs his most permanent work in the pitch black of the locked tomb, walk with you through the terrifying silence of your Saturday and wake you up when the morning finally breaks. Middle day is not an absence. The space in between is exactly where the deepest, most permanent work is being constructed. To truly feel, he is carrying an iron knife. His son is carrying the heavy, splintered wood for a fire, the weight of a massive stone rolled away on a Sunday morning in Jerusalem. You cannot start at the cross. You have to go back long before the Roman Empire was even a thought. You have to step into the wild, primordial waters of creation itself, because there is a detail hiding in the very first chapter of Genesis, in the exact middle of the first week of the world, that changes how you read every single page that follows. Imagine dipping a reed pen into iron gall ink and pressing a single, heavy dot onto a rough piece of animal parchment. That single mark is static. It sits entirely alone. If you press the pen down a second time, you create a line. You establish distance, tension, the space between here and there. But you still do not have a shape. A builder cannot construct a house on a simple line. A heavy wooden table cannot stand on 2 legs. It is only when you press the pen down a 3rd time, dropping a 3rd dot onto the page, that something entirely new comes into existence. You suddenly have a boundary, an enclosed structure, a geometrical foundation capable of holding form and bearing immense weight. The ancient Hebrew mind understood this structural reality on a profound level. 1 is the number of absolute unity, God alone in the silence before time begins. A plague of thick, suffocating blackness falls over the dry sand of Egypt. A darkness so absolute it can be felt on the skin. 2 is the number of division, the pulling apart of light and shadow, the tearing of the waters, the painful separation between the physical and the spiritual. But 3 is the number of harmony, where the fractured, opposing pieces are finally brought back together into a stable, functional whole. In the Hebrew alphabet, the 3rd letter is Gimel. The shape of the ancient letter itself was drawn to resemble a foot walking, or a camel gamal, carrying a desperate traveler across the burning, trackless desert sand. The camel bridges the impossible, lethal distance between 2 isolated wells. It is the physical vehicle of survival, moving a human body from the place of exhaustion to the place of relief. 3 is the journey across the wasteland. 3 is not a random counting metric. It is the threshold of a completed reality. When you see a triad in the biblical text, whether it is 3 patriarchs, 3 tiers of heavy gopher wood built into Noah's Ark, or 3 angels appearing to Abraham beneath the scorching midday sun of Mamre, you are being given a grammatical signal. The author is tapping you on the shoulder, pointing at the text, telling you that a divine process is about to reach its total, unalterable conclusion. It is the seal of completeness. You can feel the weight of this in the ancient proverb that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, weaving vulnerable threads into permanent strength. But this sacred geometry was not merely a philosophical concept, paralyzing an entire empire in their homes. A prophet sinks into the freezing, crushing depths of the Mediterranean Sea, debated by ancient rabbis unrolling dusty scrolls. It is woven into the very fabric of how the universe was physically assembled, and to see the pattern begin, you have to watch what happens when the first drops of light hit the violent, chaotic water. The spirit hovers over a liquid void. Black, freezing water covers the entire surface of the deep. A wild, unformed expanse. No shape, no boundary, no pulse. God speaks. The frequency of the voice hits the void. Light violently fractures the darkness. Photons scatter across the deep. Day 1. The voice thunders again. The atmosphere rips open. The sky locks into place. A heavy firmament separates the waters above from the crushing, violent ocean below. Day 2. But look closely at the canvas. Look at what actually exists. There is no foundation. There is no warmth. There is no breath. There is no ground for a human foot to stand on. There is only splitting. There is only pulling apart. 2 days of cosmic division. 2 days of establishing boundaries. The universe is a sterile, empty theater. Then the voice speaks a third time. The violent waters rush back, foaming and churning against invisible borders. They gather into roaring seas. For the first time in the history of the cosmos, something solid pushes up through the waves. Wet, heavy, dark earth, jagged stone, bedrock, dry land. But the ground does not stay barren, the violent pressure ringing in his ears. Saltwater burning his lungs. Seaweed wrapping tightly around his skull. Green shoots aggressively break through the wet dirt. Roots push deep into the microscopic cracks of the rock. Vegetation bursts into sudden, explosive color. Fruit hangs heavy on the branches. Seeds pack the genetic code for 1 million unborn generations into a single shell. The third day is not a continuation of the tearing apart. It is the arrival of the seed. Day 1 brings illumination. Day 2 brings separation. But day 3 brings resurrection. The water pulls back. And the dead. Chaotic earth suddenly yields a harvest. The sterile void becomes a womb. This is the master blueprint. This is the very first time the structural geometry of 3 rings through the biblical text. It establishes a cosmic rhythm that will beat like a drum for the rest of human history. Chaos, division, and then on the third day, life pulled up from the deep. The dirt learns the pattern. The earth memorizes the rhythm. But it is one thing to watch green fruit break through ancient mud. It is entirely another to watch an old man carry his only son up a lonely ridge of red rock to die. Genesis chapter 22. Abraham is walking across the harsh, uneven terrain toward a mountain in the region of Moriah. He has the heavy, splintered wood. He has the iron knife and the hot coals for the fire. He has his promised son, Isaac, walking beside him, completely unaware. A heavy, jagged stone is rolled across the mouth of a garden tomb, grinding loudly against the rock face, that his own body is the intended offering. And then, verse 4 delivers a detail that feels completely unnecessary for a simple travelogue. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. The word translated third here is the Hebrew shalosh. It comes from the root shalosh, meaning three, or a triad. But to understand why the author includes this specific time frame, you have to understand how the ancient Near Eastern mind viewed the physical body. In that ancient culture, 3 days was not just a distance on a map. It was the exact, terrifying window required to confirm that a human being was truly, unalterably dead. The ancient belief held that a soul might hover near a corpse for a short time, hoping to re-enter. But by the third day, the irreversible process of physical decay begins in the internal organs. The face changes, the spirit departs permanently. The third day is the absolute, irrefutable end of human hope. It is the same time frame we see playing out centuries later in the New Testament. When a man named Lazarus falls violently ill, Jesus intentionally waits, allowing Lazarus to lie trapped in a dark stone tomb until the fourth day. He waits specifically to prove that the 3-day window of possible reversal has completely slammed shut, leaving absolutely no room, sealing a bruised, bloodied, and breathless body into the cold earth. These are not disconnected tragedies, for doubt about the miracle that is coming. That cultural reality changes everything about this agonizing hike through Moriah. For 3 entire days, in Abraham's grieving mind, his son is already a corpse. The boy walking next to him, breathing the desert air and asking innocent questions about the lamb, is a ghost. The command was given. The decision was made. The knife has already fallen in the father's heart. The 3 days are not a travel delay. They are a psychological burial. If feeling the weight of the original Hebrew language is opening up the text for you in a way you've never experienced, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So Abraham lifts his eyes on that third day. He sees the mountain of execution. He binds the boy's wrists. The iron blade goes up into the air, and the voice of the angel crashes through the terrible silence to stop it. A ram is violently caught by its horns in the thicket. The boy takes a deep breath. The son that was dead in his father's mind for Shilosh days is suddenly, miraculously, handed back alive. Isaac is pulled back from the edge of the void. They are the same countdown, repeating again and again. The father walks in agonizing silence for exactly 3 days. The pattern of the third day holds. But the rescue on Mount Moriah is only an isolated shadow. Because centuries later, an entire nation is about to walk into a suffocating darkness that feels exactly like a grave. The pattern of the third day is not always a rescue on a sunlit mountain. Sometimes, it is a burial in absolute pitch black. A heavy, unnatural shadow drops over the mighty empire of Egypt. This is not a solar eclipse. This is a physical, suffocating weight. The text says it is a darkness that can be felt. Torches refuse to light. The ambient heat of the sun completely vanishes. The greatest military superpower on the planet is instantly paralyzed in their homes. Men sit shivering on the cold stone floor, unable to see the hands in front of their faces, terrified to take a single step. They sit in the blinding blackness for 1 day. They sit in the agonizing silence for 2 days. They sit in the absolute terror for exactly 3 days. But on the other side of that third day, the chains of slavery finally snap. The blood of the lamb goes on the wooden doorposts. A nation walks out of the graveyard of Egypt and into the dawn. Centuries later, the same suffocating darkness falls again. The paralyzing darkness covers the nation for exactly 3 days. The prophet is trapped in the belly of the beast for exactly 3 days. But this time, it is underwater. A rebel prophet named Jonah is thrown over the wooden rail of a ship. He sinks like a stone into the violent, freezing waves of the Mediterranean. The crushing weight of the ocean presses aggressively against his ribs. Salt water floods his throat. The text says, the seaweed wraps around his head like a burial shroud as he descends to the very roots of the mountains. He is swallowed into the tight, acidic belly of a great fish. He is trapped in the crushing dark for 1 day. He is buried in the deep for 2 days, He breathes the stale, rotting air for exactly 3 days. The belly of the beast is not a coffin. It is a crucible. On the 3rd day, the fish violently vomits the prophet onto dry land. Jonah is pulled up from the deep, resurrected from the bottom of the sea to carry a message of life to a dying city. The darkness of Egypt was a tomb. The belly of the fish was a tomb. The 3 days always look like the end of the story. The 3 days always feel like the Creator has closed his eyes and abandoned the world to the chaos. But the dark is where the resurrection is forged. Every single time the Israelites read these stories, the rhythm was reinforced. Chaos, burial, and a 3rd day rise.